Okay, welcome back. It may be the biggest secret. I consider it in many ways to be exactly that. Russ Dizdar joins us tonight. He was on last night. This is part 2 of our conversation about the issue of SRA, or ritual satanic sex abuse, however you will, ritual sex abuse. The idea of controlling people through destroying them as children for life. And it is a very real tragedy beyond measure of an issue. Human lives are the most precious thing we have on this planet, and that any consciousness of any kind, and obviously a very evil one, could take a human life, a little boy or a little girl, at the age of 5 or 6, and break that child down into multiple fragments, reassemble the child, control the child for life, literally in many cases program that child to commit suicide so there's no evidence around, no one to talk. But before that happens, in many cases, jobs are assigned to these young people, tasks, whether it be to serve as human flesh in the human slave trade market, a human assassin, a shooter. It doesn't matter. There are many. There is evil on this planet that is immeasurable, not understandable to most people, and perhaps extends far beyond the realms that most people think of as what we call reality. Russ has been studying this and working with people who have been afflicted, damaged, and ruined by this on both ends for a long time, both the victim and the perpetrator. The perpetrator, of course, in most cases has no idea that he or she is being used, never will, never does, and is often a very conflicted person, someone who cannot maintain an equilibrium, a happy lifestyle, who is so desperately wounded as a youngster they seek abject control of those around them. Insecurity, paranoia, anxiety, jealousy, you name it, all part and parcel of being tragically violated to the core and beyond as a child. Yes, RSA, ritual satanic abuse, occurs at other ages in life, but it's the loss of a child's innocence that angers me more than anything else. Anything. Being a child is the most precious, wonderful thing that we as a species have. And we as a species are failing or have failed in our responsibility to guard and protect and nurture that. I don't see us getting it back. Not in the time we have left. Perhaps someday. But Russ may have other things to say about that. Welcome back, Russ, and thank you for being here.
Jeff, it's great to be here with you again. Thanks for having me on and dealing with this. I'm glad that it's being exposed more and more.
Well, we're doing our best. Of course, they don't like the idea that we are exposing it. But you've been at this a long time. I'm getting a little feedback in the studio. The idea that you've been doing this and are still alive and kicking, as it were, is quite remarkable. You obviously are a man of great integrity, great bravery, and are so committed to what you're doing that you have, I don't want to use the New Age cliche of white light around you, but you must have something that's very special, or they would have gotten to you long ago.
Well, that, Jeff, would be the Lord Jesus. I mean, that's who I know. That's His power, His grace. And that's what the satanic rituals are all about, in total warfare, total blasphemy. It's all about their hatred of God. And they know who. I mean, every demonic presence that's ever come through, the victims, those entities know who Christ is. And so that's His compassion, His love. That's who changed my life and brought me out of stuff. And that's who I've seen help individuals again and again and again. So that salvation, that healing, that deliverance, and even miracle, even God stepping in miraculous ways, that's where we see and have confidence in helping these individuals. And all of them, they all know, because of the rituals, they know that it's done in contrast against the rituals themselves are designed against Christ. And so that's where we stand in our position. The bad guys need to be, as you're doing tonight, they need to be more and more going to echo the fact that what you're allowing tonight, they have been wanting to hear, and now they're being able to say, you know what, this is what it sounds like, what I saw in the psych ward, what I saw in the prison, what I saw in the crime, what we've heard about. Now we know more than ever it's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. Next question, which I didn't get to last night, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time on, is the number of people who are under the control of the cult is quite large. No one knows how large. But before we ask you to even take a stab at that, how widespread is the cult? I call it the cult. I don't know what you call it, but it is the satanic ritual sexual abuse, the demonic Luciferian blacker than black element that is on this planet. I have studied it on a limited basis for quite a long time, more recently, more intensely, but it seems to be virtually from the top on down, as we discussed briefly last night. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. It's multi-continental, multinational. It's designed to be that way because of the future. So from the very high elites, political, military, economic, in media, all the places where control would be, they're going to have to be there. But it does kind of trickle down to where this is, where the powers are needed, where the servants are needed, where the money is needed, where eventually those vessels will be used to help crash it all so that those above them can take the power. So people have called it shadow government, Illuminati, ancient brotherhood.
And it goes, again, all the way down to your hometown, folks. And in your hometown, the very pillars of your community may well be members of this cult. They have judges, sheriffs, police, psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, pastors, ministers, coaches, teachers. It doesn't matter what your avocation or vocation may be. You easily could be and can be a member of this cult. There are no exclusions. It's all potentially out there.
It's right. It's vast, and that's why if folks that are working with victims think in this term, if they're a victim, if they're working with a victim, then that victim has behind them a web of other victims that they've been raised with. It's all the same. They've had other victims, and then from there they have the perpetrators. So all the victims know that they have many other victims around them, and then secondly, the perpetrators that have done the crimes and have done the stuff. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones highly connected.
When someone is taken in to this beyond evil group as a slave, and that's what they really are. They're slaves. They don't know it. They never figure it out unless somehow, some way, they become extremely fortunate and are able to be reprogrammed or deprogrammed to be away from it. It's like being a member of the mob, the mafia. You don't get out. Or the CIA. You're not allowed to, they don't let you retire. You're in. And you don't know it, but you're in. And to find that out is, I don't know how rare that is, but I can't imagine it's too common, is it, for an individual who has been compromised to realize that they are?
Well, that's why there's victims that have come out. The ones that have gone to the psych wards and counseling centers, they're the ones that the programming begins to break down, intervention in some level, they're crying out to God somehow, and they're the ones that are beginning to break out. But they need a specific kind of help.
Uh-huh.
Now, the handlers are different. For them, they know that to tell is death. I think they are more controlled than even the victims they seek to control.
Interesting. The handlers. Well, that makes sense. They're under a sentence of death, and they are obviously much more instantly accessible than someone who's buried under 20, 40, or 50 personalities. Very interesting. All right, stand by if you would. We'll come right back with Russ in just a minute. Okay, and we're back with Russ Dizdar. The website is shatterthedarkness.net. Very simple, but profound. Shatterthedarkness.net. Now, Russ, when someone is a victim of the cult, taken in at a young age and broken down into pieces and then reassembled, they often live lives of quiet and not so quiet desperation and misery. They suffer. They often take things out on those around them. They seem, in many cases, and I've read about this, to be loners. They don't fit in as well as they might. They're struggling always to find themselves, and how can they not? And yet, in almost every case, they deny the very idea, the potential, that they might be controlled in some fashion. They just can't intellectually bridge that. They're not allowed to. That's part of the programming, I would assume. But you've been at this 30 years. I haven't.
Yeah, they don't. They have no idea. And that's even tell some that are coming out that, this might be a possibility. For some, it's bizarre to them. They're like, there's complete denial. And of course, that's, again, think in terms of, post-hypnotic suggestion. When a hypnotist suggests to somebody they've already done things with, you won't remember, you won't think about this, things like that. But this is deeper. This is much deeper because you have clear-cut, permanent splits. They're down with code. And then they have denial personalities. And this is weird how this works, Jeff. The denial personality that's aware of anybody trying to get in will even throw up thoughts. There's big objection on the inside of them that any of this could be true. So unless they begin to see it and hear it and have some of the major breaking down, it's very hard to convince them, hey, this is true.
The denial can be ferocious, violent, verbally violent, physically violent. It can be profound. They just can't go there because they're not supposed to. And then sometimes when that wall of programming begins to become perforated, they begin to grasp that something's not right. I don't know how many get out of it or how many are actually able to be liberated from it. Is this something that certainly they have to ask for help, and then they have to be lucky enough to find someone who has the ability and who is not, in fact, a member of the cult, him or herself, to help them. That's the game. They've got the whole damn game rigged, these people.
It really is rigged. I mean, and that's what they know because they know inside anyway. The inside knows when they try. They have, Jeff, inside informants that will call the handlers to say, hey, she's talked to so-and-so today. Hey, she went to a counselor today. Here's what they're doing. Here's where they're going. And so if they're brought back, or even that phone call that comes, that then brings down deeper, again, reaffirming their programming, rebolting them down on the inside, that can occur. We had the officer that recruited me, and so we're dealing with this officer for about a year, talking to subparts. Subparts are taking us to ritual sites and places and showing us things. I show up one day at the department. The officer gets out of the car and says, "Who the blank are you?" And I'm looking at him and say, "What do you mean? I'm your police chaplain." "I don't know you. What? Get away from my car." And I mean, they were very aggressive.
Wow.
This went on for 10 minutes. And I'm saying, listen, you recruited me. You brought me here. There's another pastor that was with me, a chaplain, and he's standing there looking like, what is this? And so it took a while when I kept throwing in conversation and saying, then I started saying things like, where did you come from? How long have you been around? And I'm asking them to think through how long they've been there. And all of a sudden you can see they're thinking, realizing they have no history. Somebody just called them up, and they were just up the last day or so, and they were only there to deny me, deny things, not allow us to work with them any longer. And it took a little bit of engagement to break through that and then see the actual person come back up and begin to talk.
Some of them say there are always recognizable hallmarks if one has been taken in and one is programmed. Missing time, other things like that. But the science of mind control, and this is far beyond mind control because this is multiple personalities, is so advanced now that, as we mentioned last night, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this can all be done over the telephone.
It sure can, and that's all it takes, again, is that singular call, and that's part of where anybody who's going to be the helper, they have to be able to know this game they play and how it works in order to, do countermeasures.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we, in the old days, would hide somebody out or put them somewhere, we would take them 20 miles away, we'd put them in their own hotel room, we'd have 3 other people in other hotel rooms waiting during ritual weekend. We figured nobody's going to get to them. Well, 11 o'clock, somebody switches up, gets on the phone, calls the coven folks, those people, tells exactly where we are, and then, they show up. This has happened, and that's why I say we learned the hard way in the early days. I'm glad we did, but now we know a little bit better what to do and how to help them. If they're beginning to break down, if we can help them, or they get kind of bolted back down and kind of, redone and pulled away or punished, the punishment is vile. The punishment is horrific. And they fear that. They really do.
All right. In your work, again, I mentioned children and childhood. The little children who are broken down and destroyed and then put back together again to be quasi-functional so they can progress through the so-called education system, do they show signs and symptoms? Are they the ones who are going to be among the first to be put on psychotropic medications? Is that one symptom?
Well, if they're children, usually children are more intact than anyone else. Because they're more pliable. You can think in terms of, and I hate to use this example, but think in terms of clay, soft clay that you can mold, bend, and form.
Yes, of course. Well, that's why they start when they're before 6 usually, because the personality is not formed and it's completely malleable.
Absolutely. And so we find it very hard and very young. You can see the issue of rapid eye movement, the issue with the eyes for those who have worked long enough with these folks, some indicators. And I will say, Jeff, that prayer helps. God does begin to break through. I mean, there really is an element to his presence and power that helps to break through and help bring them out. But it's complex.
I'm sure.
Really complex.
I'm sure it's that and then some. All right, stand by. We'll do our bottom of the hour little short interlude here and come right back with the remarkable Russ Dizdar, D-I-Z-D-A-R, in just a couple minutes. Okay, and we're back. After your long night, part 2 of our conversation with Russ Dizdar. Russ has his own program. You can go to his website and listen to him Monday through Friday. He is very well known, and this is obviously a big area. The issue of someone who is aware of the fact that he or she, as a child, was obviously violated and put through this horror, and who, as a later adult, went and sought out specific help for it, and yet is in total denial of the even remotest possibility that there could be any control whatsoever. I would imagine fits some kind of a template, does it not?
Well, there is, overall there is the idea of how this is done, the selection, the splitting, the bonding, the programming, the demonizing, the redoing of this, the training of it, embedding it, and the use. So that's there, and so they're mainly monitored to make sure all of that stays. They have internal issues of monitoring. They have external. They have the outside handlers, and in a real sense, they have inside handlers. And nobody that's just living life all of a sudden, and here's what I usually hear from them, Jeff, is this. When they do begin to break out, they do begin to realize what's happening, and they do become aware and begin to acknowledge, yes, Here's what they tell me. I thought that everybody would heard conversations of other persons inside them. I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal that I don't have any memory of 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. I thought I was just kind of nuts because I had flashbacks and dreams of crazy things. So when that happens and they're breaking a little bit of this wall when they're late 20s and 30s, so what happens? They turn to alcohol. They turn to drugs. Maybe they will see a therapist that gives drugs to suppress it and hold it all in for a little longer. That's the idea. Hold it because the answer back in the 80s and so forth was, well, they first diagnosed it in the late 70s when a few cases began to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, they diagnosed it as schizophrenia.
Mm.
It's
Sure.
different than that. It's totally different than that.
There's a tremendously ferocious denial in there and an obfuscation of dealing with it too. People just and I don't blame any of them. These poor people are tormented at a level that they just don't want to go near.
Exactly. And when anybody works with them, they'll find out this too. They all of them have a protector or a guardian in this sense. If anybody begins to say, hey, I think you've got this, or hey, let me help work with you, or something begins to crack that wall, the protector inside, they're the ones that they know, and those personalities are tired because they've had to do it for so long. Their job is to keep everything on the inside shut up and shut down. Their job is to make sure that nothing ever comes out because of the punishment, and that's their job. Those kind of protectors have told me for years. I've listened to them, and that's why I'll begin to ask who's the protector in the very beginning when we start to talk with personalities, with somebody new. Who's the protector? And usually it's somebody that comes up very gruff and rough and really ready to fight and really hardcore.
So what you're saying is that the protector personality, to keep you or anyone else away from getting to the core of the problem and ultimately helping or exposing the pain, can be extremely violent, angry, very, very clever at reverse projection, and all kinds of tricks.
Exactly. Very, very well. They're skilled. I mean, survivors are skilled anyway because they know what they need to do to protect. They're hyper vigilant. So inside parts are hyper vigilant to watch and to know, and they're always on guard. And the real truth is they are tired. They've never seen, in a real sense, they've never seen anybody get free. They just don't believe it can happen. And that's what makes it hard. So they just do their job. That's all they know, like assassin parts. All they know is because it's imposition of will. Somebody else has dumped, projecting and putting will. The whole programming is just really imposition of will. Whether that's done in verbal ways or in loops or in the old ways of psychic driving, that idea of repatterning personalities. So they just function in what they know, and they're only allowed to know that and nothing else. They're not allowed to converse on the inside. They're walled off. They're compartmentalized so that they don't begin to express that pliability of, like you and I, we can think and consider, and do I want pizza? Do I want chicken? Maybe some spaghetti? They don't have that kind of...
They do not bend at all, do they?
No. Their mind, it's like they've been frozen in one position. It's all they think, all they know, all they do. And when the demonization is added, then that's like adding gorilla glue to the programming. It's like it's enforcing the power of that programming. And
so negotiation, logical discourse, constructive agreeing to disagree, all of those normal human traits are off the table.
Really, yeah, because, and again, when somebody's engaging someone and they do begin to argue or debate or, what happens is, without the person knowing or the person dealing with them, all of a sudden they say, well, I'm dealing, I hear phrases like, I'm dealing with a whole different person. One time they're like this, one time they're like that. And many bipolars are They're diagnosed bipolar because the psychologists or psychiatrists have not yet engaged subpersonalities.
Got it.
Many bipolars are multiples that have not yet had personalities come forward, talk, or engage.
What an incredible tragedy. These people go through life unable, barred from, ill-equipped, unequipped, completely kept away from normalcy, happiness, the normal give and take of a relationship. It just doesn't work. They don't have that ability. It's barred from them. They're kept from it.
Right. And they've been stolen from physically, mentally, sexually, spiritually. I mean, this is the dark side's transmuting of a human being. This is a slavery.
And yet they can be very successful, quote unquote, at times in this society, in business, in any field. And yet inside, what a tragic, horrible situation. To even comprehend is not easy, or to try to. We'll be back with Russ in just a minute. Russ Dizdar, D-I-Z-D-A-R, an extraordinary life he is leading and trying to literally save souls, as it were. This is a very big issue. We're talking about the cult. It is international. It is worldwide. It is a form of evil expressed through humankind that is destroying countless lives. If someone is involved with someone who is a member, I know a woman, for example, who married a pillar of the community and had no idea. You just don't know. There's no way to tell until you've spent time with someone, and even then it becomes difficult. And again, as you've said, when you begin to try to broach the subject of, well, you told me that when you were a kid, this and this happened to you, and later on you were treated for this and this. You bring that up, and you are viciously attacked. Or there is blanket flat denial. You don't have much left to do. You don't have many options unless the programming begins to break down and that person says, I want the hell out of here, and somehow, some way can shake the handler and the internal protector personality. That's a long shot, though, isn't it, Russ? That's not easy.
Yeah, it's not, unless there is some kind of intervention. It's not, and that's how it's designed. It's designed never to be cracked into from the outside. It's designed not to break down. I mean, their system isn't perfect, but that's the way it's designed. And so many individuals we worked with, the spouse, we had a federal officer. It's his wife. We're dealing with her. But now, as we're dealing with their personalities are coming out left and right. They're leaving the house in the middle of the night. Phone calls are coming. All kinds of bizarre things are occurring. And the truth is, he couldn't handle it. We're standing in our driveway, and they have 2 kids, and we're talking. And I'll just call her, her name isn't Mary, but let me just say Mary. Mary's standing there, and Mary looks at the husband and says, well, I'm not the one that married you anyway. The federal officer literally jumped in anger, shaking his arms. He says, well, who did I marry? Uh-huh. And then she tried to explain it was another personality that he actually met, and that's who got along with him, but that she didn't marry. And he says, well, this officer couldn't handle it, and he finally divorced her because of everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. That happens with friends that I have. I know that same kind of thing. They have to deal with sub-personalities that do not look at the children or the spouse as theirs. Understand.
I understand very well what you're saying. I'm sure a lot of people listening do as well. There's just it's not even a disconnect. It's just a whole different person. They're not there. There's very little bleed through here, if any. Just doesn't happen.
If we think in terms of a family, inside, like I would come to a house, I married, my wife. We love the whole of the family, but I'm not married to the mother, her mother, or her dad, or the brother, or the nephews, or the grandmother. Mm-hmm. That's all extended on the outside. For them, the family's on the inside. all created when they shouldn't have been, programmed and all the rest. So you're dealing with an inside family, and it depends on who you meet in the beginning, because all the rest of them are looking at different issues. They may put up with somebody for a while. There may be many other things that they have to deal with, and I've seen quite a few spouses really go through it. Some have walked away, and some where the multiple is still. And this is the hard thing for some to understand. And I've come out to say the honest truth. There are some that we've dealt with when it comes down to what they want, the centrality of their power. The truth is, some of them want that side. They want that power. They believe in that elitism. And we watch them walk away.
It's a domination they're after, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because they're, just like regular, they call us normies or singletons, because we have one singular personality. So, there's people that walk on, some that choose evil and do evil. We've engaged people like that. But even within some of these, some of them feel like, hey, this is how they say to me, we're superior. We have these are our abilities. I'm not giving up my powers, is what some of them said over time. And some have clearly, like the federal officer's wife, walked away and continue to do what they're doing. And it's now 15 years later and they're still out there.
The idea of what we used to call mood swings or near instant changes in demeanor, attitude, voice quality. I've heard these things. They're real. They are astonishing to see. Of course, if the individuals are confronted, they say, "Oh, just changing moods. That's all." But not when you have a different voice inflection, different speech sounds. It becomes bizarre, and the face actually changes too in these people. I understand. And we've seen this, hundreds of times, because we've dealt with probably 300 or more individuals, but in one individual, we may end up dealing with 20 other personalities, and each one being different when they do come up, and it takes time. And when they go through the healing process, it's, sometimes one by one, sometimes a group of them, but that's true. The color of the eyes, the way the eyes, one personality might need to wear glasses, the other doesn't. One personality may smoke a cigarette, the other can't stand it. One is right-handed, one is left-handed. And the changes are much less than that too, aren't they? I'm talking also about facial musculature changes. Not just, I'm frowning. There's a different configuration. The eyes become bigger, perhaps. They take on a much different look. It is a very imponderably frightening and bizarre thing. And you deal with this all the time. That amazes me.
And if you ask a sub-person, draw a picture of yourself real quick for me. It will not look like the person you're looking at. The way they see themselves in the mirror, the way they perceive themselves, and I say Mary's the main center person, but I'm talking to little Jody, and I say, Jody, draw me a picture of what you look like. Jody looks like she's 14, stringy hair, a little dress, a teddy bear in her hand. But the 38-year-old woman is totally different. It's Johnny. And they see. It's really bizarre, Jeff. It really, even to this day, it's really bizarre.
And they don't necessarily present themselves that quickly or that rapidly. You might see a primary personality for days, but then all of a sudden you might go through 3 or 4 in a few minutes.
Right. Different situations. You have some that have fighters inside, and if something comes up, guess who comes up? The fighter. There are some, and this is, again, another story, ex-officer, police officer, now a pastor. He's there with us. We're working with a girl here in Cuyahoga Falls. Her little daughter's there. She's 3. We're doing all we can to help her, and we want to get out. We're helping her. Well, sub-person, when this chaplain's trying to talk to her and help her, all of a sudden leans back, does a perfect roundhouse kick, and clocks him in the head. This girl.
Wow.
Expert martial art move that just clocks them in the head. And so you got to remember on the inside, for the sake of protection, cult loyalty, that nobody gets harmed, or worrying whether you're one of the cult members playing games, they're hyper vigilant. They don't know who to trust, and but inside they really are smart. They're not crazy, unless the front person just knows that things are breaking down. They think, I'm crazy. No, something happened to you, and here, we can find the explanation, and here's what it is, and here's what we're going to have to do to help. Very smart on the inside, as you said. I've sat down and talked to personalities that are nurses, some that know quantum physics and talk about time travel, and they're extremely smart. Other personalities that are extremely versed in occult literature. Others that could know politics. It's an array on the inside.
Well, you mentioned the fighter. If one meets someone with a prominent altar that is a fighter, that is going to be the basic MO of doing the business of human intellectual conversational commerce. They want to fight all the time. And if you say anything that isn't yes sir or no sir or yes ma'am or no ma'am, the fighter appears. It's quite daunting.
Their internal sense too is that punishment is a good thing, that it's obedience to the coven, to the cult, to the order.
And they like to do, excuse me, but do they also not feel it is their right and almost duty to dish out punishment to people they feel, by their terms, whichever altar is there, is misacting somehow or misbehaving?
That's how they lived. That's how they would, that's their world, and that's their world inside and among the coven. And so when that begins to happen, to the regular normal world, they come out. That's what they believe. This is how it should work, and they see that it doesn't always work that way. But
so punishment is part of the MO for these people, and they again don't need to. They don't attend monthly coven meetings. They don't have to. These people can be literally, physically left alone for apparently long, long periods of time and still quite easily controlled. Is that fair?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Wow. Russ, I'd like to conclude part 3 tomorrow night if you're available. I want to talk about this on a larger scale, or soon thereafter, so let me know what's convenient for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here again and for sharing all this. It's just an almost indescribable situation on this planet, but it's real. Thank you, Russ.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Good night.
Night. Okay, there we go. Part 2 of our 3-part conversation with satanic ritual abuse and multiple personality expert, 30 years, Russ Dizdar. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Take care.